Yeah, well, obviously on an expedition you expect to be taking a few risks, and there were some hairy situations we got in, but everything seemed to be going fine. And it was actually the very last day of field work, when we were just about to head back to the village and it was all over, when we had the accident that unfortunately has now defined the expedition in most people's memories. We'd broken camp that morning, we'd loaded the horses, and we were crossing a river on the way back to the village. We'd only gone a few hundred yards. Now, this river we'd crossed 4 days previously, and we'd done it on foot without any difficulties. But there'd been some really heavy rain in the mountains, and so it was now quite a serious obstacle. So we got onto the horses to get across. And we'd reached the other side, everyone was getting ready to dismount, and the guide led the pack horses up the bank to get out of the actual river basin. And his lead horse fell, knocked into the next horse down, which then collapsed and unfortunately fell upon myself and on Kim, who were still in the river at the time. And despite our best efforts, it went down on Kim's leg. And so Kim was very badly hurt by this. Obviously there was a bit of panic and everyone running around trying to sort things out. We managed to get Kim to the riverbank. We splintered her leg using, funnily enough, we used the poles for the insect net and some emergency splinting materials we had. Carried her out onto the bank, kept her warm, gave her some pain relief, and then I sent the horses off with the guide and one of the Swiss people with a load of money to the village to try and get a helicopter. And we also activated an emergency rescue beacon, which is one of these. It's known as an EPIRB, or a PLB, personal locator beacon, and this sends a signal internationally, and it actually transmits on an international distress frequency. It's picked up by satellites throughout the world, and it transmits. If you happen to pull this red tag off, it sends up an aerial and it gives a GPS location and a distress signal, which was picked up by RAF Kinloss in Scotland, who were the first people to hear about our accident and then alerted various people. By that afternoon, the people on horseback had reached the village and given some money to the helicopter pilots, and then with their information and with the radio beacon that was giving our position, a helicopter was scrambled and came over to find us. By that time we'd cleared a path from Kim, we'd cleared a place for the helicopter to land, and I had two willow poles wrapped in orange cloth, which I was using to flag down the helicopter and bring them into the patch. And then within a few minutes we were able to get everyone down to Kim, carry her out, get all the bags in the helicopter and fly back to Wesso, where there was an ambulance waiting and she could receive some medical care at the clinic. Well, we suspected a broken leg, which is why we were particularly concerned to get her evacuated. It now seems that her leg, there may be a small fracture but nothing serious, but there is quite a bit of soft tissue damage, so she's still on crutches and she's likely to not be able to walk on it for a few months. But she's in good spirits. She was in good spirits throughout, actually. Although I'm disappointed and upset that one of the students got hurt, but you do have to be prepared for things like that on an expedition. These risks are all part of the deal. So I intend to go back to Kamchatka in 5 or 10 years' time, and actually we were lucky enough to get a helicopter evacuation from the village to the regional capital in Petropavlovsk, which allowed us to fly right over the centre of Kamchatka. Obviously this was to get Kim to the hospital as quickly as possible, but if you're going to be flying through the mountains, then you have to take advantage of it. And I saw some fantastic areas that I think I'll try to get back to at some point in the future. But next year I don't think I'm going to do something quite so ambitious, but then 2 years' time, the next expedition. Not sure yet, but thinking maybe about the Aleutian Islands. Yeah, when the beacon went off, the Coast Guard agency phoned up my wife because they had my home contact details, obviously, with the beacons being registered to me. So she got a late night phone call from them without very much information at all, because obviously all they know is a distress beacon's gone off somewhere in Russia and they don't know who's been hurt, what's going on. And so she unfortunately had a rather sleepless night. She was already somewhat upset that I'd been away from home for quite so long, including, I must admit, missing our wedding anniversary only 2 weeks before that. So she was glad to see me back again.